My mother and sister chose a casual 8-minute piano recital over my wedding, leaving me humiliated at the altar while guests whispered. They thought I would quietly accept the disrespect like always. Instead, I sent a single eviction notice that left them homeless and exposed their cruelty to everyone. The silence in the cathedral wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. It was the kind of silence that pressed against your eardrums, filled with the unspoken questions of 150 guests shifting uncomfortably in wooden pews. I stood in the small, ornate holding room just off the vestibule, gripping my bouquet of white roses so tightly that the plastic-wrapped stems were digging into my palms, leaving deep, crescent-shaped indentations. My knuckles were white, matching the silk of the dress I had spent 3 years saving for. "Haley," my bridesmaid, Sarah, said softly, her voice laced with a pity I hadn't wanted to hear today. She reached out, touching my shoulder gently. "It's been an hour. The organist has played Canon in D 5 times. People are starting to go outside to smoke. Some are checking their watches." I stared at my reflection in the full-length vintage mirror. The woman looking back at me was supposed to be radiant. She was supposed to be the happiest version of herself. Instead, she looked pale, with eyes wide and glassy, trembling on the edge of a collapse. "They're coming," I whispered, though the conviction in my voice had evaporated 30 minutes ago. "Mom said they were just running a little late. Adeline had a warm-up." "Haley," Sarah said, more firmly this time. "We called them. Roman called them. Your dad isn't answering. Your mom isn't answering. Even your aunt and uncle aren't picking up. The entire front 2 rows are empty." I closed my eyes, fighting back the tears that threatened to ruin the professional makeup job I had paid a fortune for. The image of those empty pews burned in my mind. The groom's side was full. Roman's family, loud, boisterous, and supportive, was all there. My side? It was a barren wasteland of polished wood, save for a few college friends and coworkers who looked confused and embarrassed on my behalf. My phone, sitting on the vanity table, buzzed. I lunged for it, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. It was a text from my mother, Vivian. "Don't be dramatic, Haley. We're at the community college. Adeline is nervous, and she needs the whole family here for support. It's her first solo recital since she started lessons again. We can't just walk out on her. Start without us, we'll catch the reception." I stared at the screen. The words swam before my eyes, rearranging themselves into a cruel joke. "Adeline is nervous. Start without us." Adeline was 22 years old. She had decided to take up piano 3 months ago because she was bored with her communications degree. This wasn't Carnegie Hall. It was a Tuesday afternoon recital at the local community center. And today was my wedding day. The door creaked open, and Roman stepped in. He looked dashing in his tuxedo, but his face was a mask of thunderous fury. He didn't care about the tradition of not seeing the bride. He crossed the room in 2 strides and wrapped his arms around me. "I saw the text," he said, his voice low and shaking with suppressed rage. "Your cousin just posted a selfie on Instagram. They're all there. Your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle. They're sitting in the front row of a gym auditorium holding flowers for Adeline." "They aren't coming," I choked out, the reality finally shattering the denial I had been clinging to. "My own mother isn't coming to watch me get married because Adeline is playing Mary Had a Little Lamb at a community college." "Haley," Roman said, pulling back to look me in the eyes. "We can call this off. We can send everyone home. You don't have to go out there." I looked at him, the only person in the world who truly put me first. Then I looked at the door leading to the sanctuary. If I canceled, they won. If I went home crying, I was just the dramatic, jealous older sister they always painted me as. "No," I said, my voice trembling but hardening. "I've waited an hour. I'm not waiting another second." I walked out to the altar, my eyes fixed strictly on Roman, refusing to look at the glaring, empty gap where my family should have been. As I walked, a coldness settled in my chest, replacing the heartbreak. It was a numbness, a hardened shell forming over the wound. The betrayal wasn't just that they missed the ceremony. It was the realization that, in their hierarchy of love, my life's greatest milestone was worth less than 8 minutes of Adeline's hobby. The ceremony was a blur. I remember the weight of Roman's hands in mine, anchoring me to the earth when I felt like I might float away into the ether of panic. I remember the priest skipping the part about who gives this woman, a mercy that saved me from having to explain why no father stood beside me. But mostly, I remember the reception. It was held in a beautiful, glass-walled venue overlooking the botanical gardens. We had paid for plates for 150 people. The tables reserved for my family, tables 1, 2, and 3, sat completely empty. The centerpieces, expensive arrangements of orchids and hydrangeas, stood guard over pristine white napkins that would never be unfolded. Every time a waiter walked by those tables, they hesitated, looking at me with that same unbearable pity Sarah had shown earlier. "Can we just have them remove the chairs?" I asked the coordinator quietly during the cocktail hour. "Please, just take the tables away. It looks like a graveyard." She nodded frantically, whispering into her headset, and within minutes, the staff descended, collapsing the tables and whisking them away. But the empty space on the dance floor remained, a physical scar on the room. Roman stayed by my side the entire night, acting as a shield. Every time a well-meaning guest from his side approached to ask, "Where are your parents, dear?" or "Is everything okay with the family?" Roman would step in. "They had a medical emergency," he lied smoothly, over and over again. "They're devastated they couldn't make it." He was protecting their reputation to save my dignity. I went to the bathroom around 9:00 p.m. to splash cold water on my face. The bathroom was empty, the marble echoing the sound of the faucet. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked exhausted. The joy of being a bride had been siphoned out of me, leaving behind a hollow ache. My phone buzzed again, another text from Vivian. "Recital was amazing. Adeline was a star. She played a simplified version of Moonlight Sonata and didn't miss a single note. We're going out for a celebratory dinner at that Italian place she loves. We're so exhausted, so we're going to skip the reception. Save us some cake. Love you." I read the message 3 times. Celebratory dinner. They were 20 minutes away. They could have come. They could have made an appearance. They could have tried to salvage the wreckage. Instead, they were eating pasta and celebrating Adeline's 8 minutes of mediocrity, while I sat at my own wedding dinner, surrounded by the ghost of their absence. They didn't even ask if I was married yet. I whispered to the empty bathroom. I didn't cry. I think I had run out of tears. Instead, I felt a strange shift in my perspective. For years, no, for decades, I had chased their approval. I had been the good daughter, the one who didn't cause trouble, the one who graduated early, got a good job, and managed her finances, the one who fixed things. I looked at the text again. "Love you." It was tacked on at the end, an afterthought, a garnish on a plate of poison. I thought about the apartment Adeline lived in, the one with the exposed brick and the view of the park. I thought about the country club membership my parents flaunted to their friends, the one with the hefty annual dues. I typed out a reply, my thumb hovering over the send button. "I hope the pasta is worth it." But I didn't send it. I deleted the draft and slipped the phone back into my clutch. Roman was waiting for me outside the restroom. He looked concerned. "Haley, you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, and for the first time that day, I actually felt a spark of genuine strength. I took his arm. "Let's go cut the cake. I don't want to save them a slice." "Are you sure?" Roman asked, searching my face. "I'm sure," I said, a dark smile touching my lips. "They think everything is going to stay the same. They think they can skip my wedding and I'll just be the dutiful daughter who pays the bills and nods politely." I looked toward the exit, imagining them laughing over wine, toasting to Adeline, completely oblivious to the nuclear winter that was about to descend on their comfortable little lives. "They forgot one crucial thing," I said softly, more to myself than to Roman. "What's that?" They forgot who signs the checks. To understand why my mother, Vivian, would skip my wedding for a piano recital, you have to understand the mythology of Adeline. From the moment Adeline was born, she was the sun around which our family orbited. I was 6 years old when she arrived, and almost immediately I became the assistant parent. I was the reliable one, the one who fetched diapers, the one who made her own lunch, the one who brought home straight A's so my parents wouldn't have to worry about me and could focus entirely on Adeline's sensitive nature. Adeline wasn't bad initially, she was just consumed. Vivian was convinced Adeline was a prodigy at everything she touched. When Adeline was 5, she was going to be an Olympic gymnast. My parents spent thousands on coaching, and I spent my weekends sitting on hard bleachers doing homework while Adeline tumbled. When she quit 6 months later because the coach W. As mean, Vivian said Adeline was too artistically free for such a rigid sport. Then it was ballet, then violin, then acting, then painting. By the time we were adults, the dynamic was set in stone. I was the landscape architect, steady, boring, practical. I made good money. I invested. I bought a house. Adeline was the creative soul. She was 22, had dropped out of 3 different colleges, and was currently finding herself. And Vivian enabled every second of it. Vivian was a woman who cared more about the appearance of success than actual achievement. She loved telling her friends at the country club about her brilliant daughter Adeline, framing her lack of employment as taking a gap year to curate her portfolio. But here was the secret that nobody at the club knew. My parents were broke. Dad had retired early due to health issues, and their savings had been decimated by bad investments and years of funding Adeline's fleeting passions. They kept up appearances, the nice cars, the club membership, the vacations, because of me. 3 years ago, when I started landing major commercial contracts, Vivian came to me crying. She said they were going to lose the house. She said the club was going to revoke their membership, which would kill Dad socially. So I stepped in. I didn't just give them cash, I structured it. I bought an investment property, a gorgeous 2-bedroom apartment downtown, and let Adeline live there rent-free as long as she was in school, telling my parents it was building my equity. I paid the annual dues for the Golden Oak Country Club directly from my business account, writing it off as networking expenses since I occasionally took clients there. I was subsidizing their illusion of wealth. I did it because I wanted them to love me. I thought if I was useful enough, if I was successful enough, eventually Vivian would look at me with the same adoration she gave Adeline. I was wrong. The morning after the wedding, Roman and I were at the hotel, packing for our honeymoon. My phone rang. It was Vivian's. "Haley," she chirped, her voice bright and airy, completely devoid of guilt. "We missed you at breakfast. We just stopped by your house to drop off a gift, but you weren't there." "I'm at the hotel, Mom," I said, putting the call on speaker so Roman could hear. I kept my voice flat. "We're leaving for the airport in 3 hours." "Oh, right, Hawaii, how fun," she breezed past it. "Listen, I need a tiny favor. Adeline is thinking of switching her major to music theory. The recital really inspired her. But the tuition is due next week, and things are a little tight with the wedding gift we bought you. Could you float us $5,000? Just until Dad's pension check clears." I looked at Roman. His jaw was on the floor. They had skipped my wedding. They had left me standing at the altar for an hour. They hadn't apologized. And now, less than 24 hours later, she was asking for $5,000 to fund Adeline's next whim. "You want money?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "It's an investment in your sister's future, Haley," Vivian said, her tone taking on that familiar, lecturing edge. "She has a gift. You weren't there to hear it, but she was magical. The piano teacher said she has real potential. We have to nurture that. You're so established, you don't understand how fragile her spirit is right now." "You weren't there to hear it." She said it as if it were my fault. As if I had chosen to be absent from the recital rather than being the bride at my own wedding. "I can't transfer anything right now, Mom," I said. "I'm about to get on a plane." Well, do it from the app, Vivian snapped, her patience thinning instantly. God, Haley, why do you always have to make everything so difficult? It's for family. You know how hard it is for us right now. We do everything for you. Everything for me, I repeated. You didn't come to my wedding. Oh, stop it, Vivian scoffed. We've been over this. It was a scheduling conflict. We sent a card, don't be petty. Adeline needed us. You have Roman, you're fine, you're always fine. You're always fine. That was the sentence that snapped the final thread. That was the mantra that had justified 20 years of neglect. Because I was strong, I didn't need love. Because I was capable, I didn't deserve support. You're right, Mom, I said, staring at my reflection in the hotel mirror. I looked different today. Colder, sharper. I am fine, I'll handle it. Good, she said, relieved. Transfer it by noon. The registrar's office closes early. I'll handle everything, I said. Goodbye, Vivian. I hung up. Did you just call her Vivian? Roman asked, stepping closer. I did, I said. I opened my laptop and logged into my property management software. Then I opened a new tab for the country club's member portal. What are you doing? I'm done being the bank, I said, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I'm done being the safety net. They want to live in a world where Adeline is the priority? Fine. Let's see how much Adeline can pay for. I wasn't just going to say no. I was going to dismantle the entire infrastructure of their lives. The shift from daughter to landlord didn't happen with a bang, but with the quiet, rhythmic clicking of my laptop keys in the Delta Sky Club lounge. Roman was at the buffet getting us coffee and bagels, giving me 10 minutes of unmonitored time before our flight to Maui boarded. I wasn't crying anymore. The tears had dried up somewhere between the cannon in D and the cutting of the cake. What was left was a cold, crystalline clarity. I looked at the lease agreement for the downtown apartment. It was a standard month-to-month contract I had drawn up years ago, mostly for tax purposes, listing Adeline as the tenant and myself as the owner. I had never enforced the rent, simply marking it as paid in my books every month as a gift. Not anymore. I opened a template for a notice to quit, a formal eviction notice. Dear tenant, I typed, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. This letter serves as your 30-day notice to vacate the premises located at 440 West Elm Street. My hands didn't shake. I thought they would. I thought I would feel a wave of guilt, that old, familiar conditioning that told me I was responsible for Adeline's happiness. But all I could picture was the empty front pew. All I could hear was the silence of my phone on my wedding morning, broken only by a request for money 24 hours later. I hit print on the lounge's business center printer. Then, I drafted the second letter. This one was to the Golden Oak Country Club. To membership services. Please accept this letter as formal notification of the immediate cancellation of the sponsored membership for Vivian and Arthur Miller, effective the 1st of next month. All autopay functions linked to my account ending in 4092 should be terminated immediately. I signed it with a flourish. Roman returned, setting a plate of fruit down. He saw the papers sliding out of the printer. He picked up the eviction notice, his eyes scanning the legal jargon. He didn't look shocked, he looked relieved. Are you sure? He asked, handing it to me. Once you mail these, there's no going back. This is nuclear, Haley. They didn't just miss a party, Roman, I said, sliding the papers into the pre-stamped envelopes I kept in my laptop bag. They showed me exactly where I stand. I'm just adjusting my financial portfolio to reflect that reality. We dropped the letters in the airport mailbox right before security. As the metal flap clattered shut, swallowing the envelopes, I felt lighter than I had in 20 years. The honeymoon was paradise, but it was a paradise with an expiration date. For 7 days, we ignored the world. I turned my phone off. I didn't check emails. I drank Mai Tais and swam with turtles and pretended I didn't have a family back in Ohio who were about to open the worst mail of their lives. But the anxiety began to creep back in on the flight home. I knew what was waiting for me. When we landed, I turned my phone on. It vibrated continuously for 4 minutes straight. 47 missed calls, 63 texts, voicemails from Dad, screaming texts from Adeline, and a barrage of guilt-tripping essays from Vivian. How could you? Daddy is having chest pains because of you. Adeline is hysterical. She can't move out. She has exams. Call me immediately or I am calling the police. The police? Roman laughed darkly as we waited at baggage claim, reading over my shoulder. For what? Evicting a tenant who hasn't paid rent in 3 years. They're panicking, I said, scrolling through the wall of text. They realize the ATM is broken. But amidst the chaos, one text caught my eye. It wasn't from my immediate family. It was from my Aunt Carol, my dad's sister. She was a gossip, but she was usually harmless. Haley, honey, I heard about the fight. Your mom said you're kicking Adeline out because you need to sell the apartment to pay off gambling debts. Is that true? We're all so worried about you. I froze, gambling debts. She's spinning it, I whispered, showing Roman the phone. She's not telling people I'm cutting them off. She's telling people I'm broke and desperate. She's trying to save face, Roman said, his jaw tightening. She can't admit her daughter cut her off, so she has to make you the villain who needs the money. Something about the lie didn't sit right. It was too specific. And it made me wonder, if they were willing to lie about this, what else were they lying about? Vivian had asked for $5,000 for Adeline's tuition right before I snapped. She said Adeline was switching to music theory. I pulled up my banking app. I searched for tuition. I had sent checks directly to the university for the first 2 years, but for the last 18 months, Vivian had asked me to transfer the money to her joint account with Adeline because of financial aid complications or registration holds. I had blindly trusted her. I opened the university's public directory on my phone. I typed in Miller, Adeline. No results found. My stomach dropped. I tried the student portal login I had set up for her freshman year. The password had been changed. We need to make a stop before we go home, I said to Roman, gripping my suitcase handle. Where? The university registrar, I said. I think I've been paying for a degree that doesn't exist. We didn't go to the registrar immediately. It was Sunday and the offices were closed. We went home. Pulling into our driveway, I saw them. My parents' silver Lexus was parked crookedly across the curb, blocking our mailbox. Adeline was sitting on the front steps of my porch, hugging her knees, looking like a tragic heroine in a movie. Vivian was pacing the lawn, phone to her ear. Showtime, Roman muttered, putting the car in park. Do you want me to handle this? No, I said, unbuckling my seatbelt. This is my mess. I stepped out of the car. The moment Vivian saw me, she hung up the phone and marched toward me. She wasn't wearing her usual composed mask. Her face was blotchy, her hair slightly frizzed. She looked cornered. You, she hissed, pointing a manicured finger at my chest. You selfish, vindictive little girl. Do you have any idea what you've done? Welcome back, Haley. How was Hawaii? I said dryly, hauling my suitcase out of the trunk. It was beautiful, thanks for asking. Don't you get sarcastic with me, Vivian shrieked. Adeline stood up, wiping at dry eyes. We got a letter from the club, Haley. The general manager called your father personally. He asked if we were having liquidity issues. Do you know how humiliating that is? To have the staff look at us like we're paupers. And the apartment? Adeline chimed in, her voice a perfect tremble. Haley, you can't kick me out. I have midterms. I can't move my piano. Where am I supposed to go? You have 30 days, I said calmly, dragging my suitcase toward the door, forcing them to part like the Red Sea. That's plenty of time to find a roommate or move back in with Mom and Dad. We don't have room, Vivian snapped. And we certainly don't have the money to move her right now, especially since someone is refusing to help with her tuition. I stopped. I turned slowly to face them. We were standing in the middle of the driveway. The neighbors were definitely watching. Help with tuition, I repeated. Is that what you need the money for, Adeline's classes? Yes, Vivian insisted, crossing her arms. She is a student. She needs stability. You are disrupting her education because you're throwing a tantrum about a wedding. Grow up, Haley. Families miss events. It happens. You don't destroy your sister's future over a party. I'm not destroying her future, I said, reaching into my purse and pulling out my phone. I'm just checking the facts. Because I was looking at the transfers I sent you last semester, Mom. $6,000 in September. $4,000 in January. That went to the tuition, right? Of course it did, Vivian said, though her eyes darted to the side for a fraction of a second. Why are we talking about this? Rescind the eviction notice, Haley. Now. And the club membership, I asked. That too, your father needs that network for his consulting. Dad hadn't consulted in 6 years. He mostly sat in the clubhouse watching golf and drinking scotch. Okay, I said, feigning surrender. I'll think about it, but first, Adeline, I'd love to see your schedule, since I'm paying for it. Adeline froze. She looked at Vivian. Her schedule, Vivian scoffed. She doesn't carry it around. What is this, an interrogation? It's simple, I said, stepping closer. You want me to keep paying for the apartment? You want me to keep paying the club dues? Prove to me that Adeline is actually enrolled in school. Log into the student portal right now. Show me her grades from last semester. The silence that followed was louder than Vivian's screaming had been. I forgot my password, Adeline stammered, looking at her shoes. That's funny, I said. Because I tried to look you up in the public directory at the airport. You aren't listed, Adeline. You haven't been listed for a year. Vivian stepped in front of Adeline, her face turning a dangerous shade of purple. How dare you spy on her? She is private about her studies. You are crossing a line, Haley. You are abusing your financial power to control us. No, I said, my voice rising, finally letting the anger bleed through. I am stopping you from abusing my generosity. You missed my wedding for a recital? Fine, but don't stand in my driveway and lie to me about where my money is going. You want me to treat you like family? Family shows up. You didn't. So now I am treating you like a bad investment, and I'm liquidating. You will regret this, Vivian spat, grabbing Adeline's arm. You think you're so high and mighty with your husband and your house, but you need us. You'll come crawling back when you realize nobody else loves you like we do. If this is love, I said, unlocking my front door, I'd rather be alone. I slammed the door in their faces, but as the lock clicked, I knew it wasn't over. Vivian wasn't the type to retreat, she was the type to scorch the earth. The week that followed was a masterclass in manipulation. Vivian didn't attack me directly again, she went for my reputation. My phone blew up with messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. My cousin in Florida messaged me, I know you're hurting, but making your parents pay for your financial mistakes isn't the way. If you need a loan, just ask. Aunt Carol called again, leaving a weeping voicemail. Haley, your mother told us about. The problem, we know you're struggling with the business and that's why you had to sell the apartment, but to kick Adeline out on the street? We're taking up a collection for her. Please, just talk to us. Vivian was telling everyone I was broke. She was telling them I was mentally unstable, jealous of Adeline, and that I was evicting her because I needed the cash to cover my failing business. She had inverted the reality completely. She was the victim, I was the collapsing villain. She's isolating you, Roman said one evening, watching me pace the kitchen. She's trying to make sure that when the truth comes out, nobody will believe you. She's poisoning the jury. I need proof, I said. Hard proof. The I forgot my password excuse won't hold up in the court of public opinion. I hired a private investigator the next morning. It felt excessive, almost like a spy novel, but I needed documentation. I needed to know where $10,000 of tuition money had actually gone. It took him 3 days. He met me at a coffee shop near my office. He slid a manila envelope across the table. It wasn't hard to find, the pie said, taking a sip of his espresso. Your sister withdrew from the university 3 semesters ago, academic probation. She never re-enrolled. I opened the folder. There it was, an official withdrawal letter. "And the money?" I asked, dreading the answer. "The transfers you sent to the joint account?" He flipped a page. "They were transferred out almost immediately. Most of it went to V. Miller Personal. From there, credit card bills, department stores, Nordstrom, Saks, and a significant amount to the Golden Oak Country Club for dining and events." My hands shook. They hadn't just wasted the money. They had been eating my money, wearing my money. They had been using the tuition, checks to buy the outfits they wore to the club where I paid the membership fees. They had been laundering my kindness into their vanity. "There's one more thing," the pie said, tapping the last page. "The apartment. They listed it on a subletting site 2 weeks ago. Luxury downtown, loft available for short-term rental. They were trying to rent out the spare room in the apartment you own to pocket the cash." I felt a wave of nausea, followed instantly by a surge of adrenaline. This was it. This was the smoking gun. I went home and printed everything. I made copies. I organized the bank statements, highlighting the transfers. I clipped the withdrawal letter. I screenshotted the illegal sublet listing. Then I got a text from my dad. It was the first time he had reached out directly. "Haley, please come to dinner tonight, just us. Mom is a mess. Adeline is sick with worry. We need to settle this as a family. No lawyers, no husbands, just come home." It was a trap. I knew it was a trap. They wanted to gang up on me, 3 against 1, to guilt me into submission. They wanted to reset the dynamic, to force me back into the role of the obedient, check-writing daughter. "Are you going?" Roman asked, looking at the text. "Yes," I said, placing the manila folder into my tote bag. "But I'm not going alone." "You want me to come?" "No," I said. "I'm taking this." I patted the bag. "They want a family meeting. They want to talk about money and tuition and family values. I think it's time we laid all the cards on the table." I drove to my childhood home. The house looked the same, imposing, manicured, a facade of perfection. I walked up the driveway, the folder heavy against my side. When I walked in, they were all sitting in the living room. Vivian was on the velvet sofa, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Adeline was curled up next to her, looking small. Dad was in his armchair, looking grim. "Haley," Dad said, standing up, "thank you for coming." "Sit down, Haley," Vivian said, her voice trembling with staged frailty. "We need to heal. We need to put this ugliness behind us. We are willing to forgive you for the eviction notice if you just apologize and reinstate the club membership. We can't have people talking." "Willing to forgive me?" I almost laughed. I remained standing. "That's generous." "We know you're under stress," Vivian continued, her voice gaining strength. "We know business must be bad. If you need to borrow money, we can ask Uncle Jerry. But don't take it out on your sister. She has a bright future. She's a student." "Stop," I said. It was a quiet word, but it cut through the room. I reached into my bag and pulled out the withdrawal letter. I tossed it onto the coffee table. It landed with a soft thwack right in front of Adeline. "What is this?" Dad asked, reaching for it. "That," I said, "is Adeline's withdrawal letter from 18 months ago." The room went dead silent. Adeline stopped breathing. Vivian froze, her handkerchief hovering halfway to her face. "And this," I said, throwing the bank statements down next, "is the paper trail showing that the $10,000 I sent for her tuition was spent on Nordstrom, Saks, and the bar tab at the country club." Dad looked at the papers. His face went gray. He looked at Vivian. "Vivian, is this true? You told me she was on the dean's list." Vivian scrambled, her eyes wild. "It's a mistake. The school made a mistake. Haley forged these. She's trying to frame us." "And the illegal sublet listing?" I threw the last paper down. "You were trying to rent out a room in my apartment behind my back." "Arthur, don't listen to her," Vivian shrieked, standing up and grabbing Dad's arm. "She's jealous. She's always been jealous of Adeline. She's lying." "I'm done lying, Mom," I said, my voice steady, powered by the truth. "And I'm done paying. The eviction stands. The club membership is canceled. And Dad, if you want to know why your retirement fund is empty, you might want to look at your wife's closet. I turned to leave. If you walk out that door, Vivian screamed, her mask completely gone, revealing the ugliness beneath. You are no daughter of mine. I will ruin you. I will tell everyone what a heartless bitch you are. I paused at the door, hand on the knob. I looked back at them, a tableau of deceit and desperation. You already missed my wedding, Vivian, I said coldly. You can't ruin a relationship that doesn't exist. I walked out, but as I got into my car, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from Facebook. Aunt Carol had tagged me in a post. Family prayer request. Please pray for my niece Haley. She has had a mental break and has attacked her own mother. We are so worried about her violent behavior. Vivian wasn't stopping. She had just taken the war public. The Facebook post was the spark that ignited the powder keg. Within an hour, my notifications were a slurry of concern, judgment, and thoughts and prayers from people I hadn't seen since high school. Vivian had framed the narrative perfectly. I was the unstable, failing daughter lashing out at her saintly, supportive parents. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the screen. Aunt Carol's post had 40 comments. Oh my God, poor Adeline, I always knew Haley was a bit intense. Praying for Vivian, she does so much for those girls. Don't engage, Roman said, taking the phone from my hand. That's what she wants. She wants you to comment so she can play the victim in the replies. I'm not going to comment, I said, standing up. I'm going to finish this. She wants a public forum? Fine, let's give her one. The annual Miller family reunion was scheduled for this coming Saturday. It was a massive barbecue hosted at my Uncle Jerry's sprawling property. The same Uncle Vivian had suggested I borrow money from. Everyone would be there. Aunt Carol, the cousins, the grandparents, the neighbors. You can't go, Roman said. It'll be a slaughter. I have to go, I said. If I don't, her version of the story becomes the truth forever. I need to look them in the eye. Saturday arrived with a sweltering heat. Roman drove, his hand resting protectively on my knee the entire way. When we pulled onto the grass at Uncle Jerry's, the tension was palpable. The chatter under the large white tent died down the moment I stepped out of the car. Vivian was holding court near the potato salad, Adeline clinging to her side like a frightened child. When they saw me, Vivian gasped theatrically, clutching her chest. She's here, I heard her whisper loud enough for half the party to hear. Oh God, Arthur, don't let her cause a scene. Aunt Carol rushed over, her face pinched with faux concern. Haley, we didn't think you'd come. Given the state you're in, maybe you should sit down. Do you need some water? I'm not sick, Aunt Carol, I said loudly, my voice carrying over the silence. And I'm not broke. Haley, please. Dad stepped forward, looking older than I had ever seen him. He looked defeated. Let's not do this here. Do what, Arthur? Vivian snapped, stepping in front of him. She's clearly here to embarrass us. She's having an episode. She turned to the crowd, spreading her hands. I'm so sorry, everyone. We tried to get her help. I reached into my bag. I didn't pull out papers this time. I pulled out my iPad. I'm not having an episode, Mom, I said. I'm having a clarification. I walked over to the portable projection screen Uncle Jerry had set up for the family slideshow later in the evening. I plugged my iPad into the HDMI cable before anyone could stop me. What are you doing? Adeline squeaked. Showing the family some photos, I said, since you guys wanted to see them so badly. The screen flickered to life, but it wasn't wedding photos. The first image was the official university withdrawal letter. Blown up to 60 inches, the date was undeniable. Adeline dropped out 18 months ago, I said, my voice steady. Academic probation. A murmur rippled through the crowd. But Vivian said she was on the dean's list, someone whispered. I swiped. The next image was a spreadsheet of bank transfers. This is the $10,000 I sent for her tuition after she dropped out, I explained. And here is where it went. I swiped again, screenshots of credit card statements. Nordstrom, Saks Fifth Avenue, Golden Oak Country Club. You told everyone I was broke, I said, looking directly at Vivian, who was now pale and trembling. You told them I was evicting Adeline because I had gambling debts. The truth is, I'm evicting her because I'm done paying for a fake degree and your designer wardrobe. Turn it off, Vivian shrieked, lunging for the cord. Jerry, turn it off, she's faked it all. But Jerry didn't move. He was staring at the screen, specifically at a highlighted charge on the statement. Vivian, Uncle Jerry said, his voice low. Why does this statement show a $2,000 charge for Jerry loan repayment? I never loaned you money. The crowd gasped. She told me, Jerry continued, looking slowly at my father, that Haley needed money for a medical procedure last year. I gave her $2,000 in cash to give to you, Haley. I never asked for money, I said, and I never got it. The pieces fell into place instantly. Vivian hadn't just been leeching off me. She had been running a Ponzi scheme of lies across the entire family, using me as the tragic excuse to solicit loans and help that went straight into her own pocket. You lied to me, Dad whispered. He looked at Vivian with a horror that was absolute. You told me Haley was sick. You told me that money was for doctors. I had to, Vivian stammered, backing away as the family circle closed in on her. We have expenses, Arthur. We have a reputation. I did it for us, to keep our heads above water. No, I said. You did it because you care more about looking rich than being a mother. You missed my wedding for a recital that Adeline didn't even care about, just so you could brag about her talent. You sacrificed my happiness for your vanity. Adeline was sobbing now, but nobody was comforting her. The golden child illusion had shattered. She was just a 22-year-old dropout who had been complicit in the theft. Vivian looked around the tent. There were no friendly faces. The country club mask had slipped, revealing the grifter underneath. I think we're done here, I said, unplugging the iPad. The screen went black. Haley, Dad said, his voice breaking. I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know. I know, Dad, I said softly. But you let it happen. You let her treat me like the bank and Adeline like the princess. You missed my wedding, too. I took Roman's hand. Let's go home. We walked back to the car in silence, leaving the chaos behind us. I didn't look back. The fallout was swift and total. The eviction went through without a hitch. Adeline moved back into my parents' house, but it wasn't the sanctuary she expected. Dad, finally shaken out of his passivity, took control of the finances. He found the credit cards Vivian had hidden. He found the loans. He sold the Lexus. He canceled the club membership himself before my letter even processed. Vivian tried to spin it one last time, posting a vague status about betrayal and ungrateful children, but the comments were disabled. She had been socially exiled. The family knew. The lies had been too big, too documented, too public. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my garden, sketching a landscape design for a new client. The sun was warm on my back. A car pulled up. It was Dad. He walked up the driveway slowly. He looked tired but clearer. He was holding a small box. Can I come in? He asked. You can sit on the porch, I said. I wasn't ready to let him all the way back in. Not yet. He sat on the swing. She's staying with her sister in Florida for a while, he said. Vivian, we're separated. I can't look at her right now. I keep thinking about you standing at that altar alone. He started to cry. It was a quiet, ugly sound. I should have been there, Haley. I let her drive the car, but I should have grabbed the wheel. I'm so sorry. He placed the box on the table. I found this in her closet. It was supposed to be your grandmother's. Vivian told me she lost it years ago. She was going to give it to Adeline for graduation. I opened the box. It was my grandmother's vintage sapphire engagement ring. The one I had asked about when I got engaged, only to be told it was gone. It's yours, Dad said. It always was. I looked at the ring, then at my father. I saw a man who was flawed, weak, but finally trying. Thank you, I said. I didn't put it on. I closed the box. But you can't buy your way back in, Dad. It's going to take time. I know, he said. I have time. Adeline eventually got a job as a barista. She texted me once, a short, awkward apology. "I'm sorry I let Mom make me into this. I'm trying to be better." I didn't reply, but I didn't block her number. That was progress. Roman and I hosted a small dinner party a month later for the friends who had actually shown up. We laughed, we drank wine, and we toasted to the future. At one point, I looked around the table at the faces of the people who loved me, not for what I could pay for, but for who I was. I realized that by losing my family, I had found my freedom. My phone buzzed, a notification from the bank. Automatic payment canceled, Golden Oak Country Club. I smiled, took a sip of wine, and turned back to my husband. "Who's ready for dessert?" I asked.